Donald Trump had a very expensive week, apparently. It's on appeal, but for now, he's in the whole few hundred million smackers. So, Russell, why don't you take this one away?
Yeah, that's the kind of money that's way beyond Stormy Daniels' money.
Oh, yeah.
That's like Catherine Zeta-Jones in her prime kind of money. Trump fraud ruling threatens to handcuff family business operations. The $355 million New York fraud ruling against Donald Trump stands to put a serious dent in his bank account, but it is the non-monetary punishments that could be particularly painful for his company. Justice Arthur Engoron, in his decision Friday, banned the former president from serving as an executive of the Trump Organization or any other New York company for 3 years, and his sons, Eric and Donald Jr., for 2. Trump and his business are also barred for 3 years from applying for loans from financial institutions registered with or chartered in New York State. Now, just to throw in a little side commentary there, that goes beyond whether the company is based in New York State. How many banks are not registered in New York State? It's fucking New York, right? It's not like Ohio State, right? I mean, pretty much every financial institution on earth is registered in New York. So that makes this particularly onerous. Collectively, the restrictions will force Trump's real estate conglomerate to reimagine how it does business inside and out of New York, all under the heavy oversight of a court-appointed monitor. The judge ordered the installation of an independent compliance director at the Trump Organization. Now, this is the kind of shit they do with like mob businesses, where they'll put somebody from the government there for several years to oversee the business. The ban on borrowing could have the greatest impact, lawyers said, because most large U.S. banks are registered or have charters with New York. When you are a realtor, you need money, said Evan Gottlob, a partner at the law firm Saul Ewing. And this is why I really resent the stereotype of the Jewish lawyer.
Right, yeah.
Because clearly these guys are Gentiles. That ruling really encumbers their ability to get money to build around the world. Unquote. Trump could still get loans elsewhere, but the process would be more burdensome and likely involve smaller institutions, he said. And Goron, siding with claims brought by New York Attorney General Letitia James, ruled that the Trumps committed a variety of civil fraud offenses in a years-long scheme to secure better terms from lenders by inflating the former president's wealth. Trump called the case a political hit job designed to interfere with his bid to return to the White House, saying banks made healthy profits on the deals and were eager for the business. Quote, "There was no fraud," Trump said Friday evening. "The banks all got their money, 100%. They love Trump.
The banks love me.
They all love me.
Great relationship with the banks.
I have a wonderful relationship for many years with the banks. We used to go out with Stormy together." Eric Trump and Donald Trump Jr. have run the company as their father's focus in recent years has been more on politics than business. A Trump Organization spokeswoman said the ruling was bad for business in the state. Quote, "If allowed to stand, this ruling will only further expedite the continuing exodus of companies from New York," she said. Trump could seek a stay from an appeals court, which already put parts of a September ruling by Engoron on hold for now. The $355 million New York fraud penalty comes with interest, meaning Trump's financial obligation could balloon quickly. The New York Attorney General's office estimates that he already owes nearly $100 million in prejudgment interest on the financial benefits he obtained improperly. Trump's net worth has been estimated at around $3 billion, but the size of his liquid assets is unclear. In a deposition last year, he testified to having more than $400 million in cash, less than he might ultimately owe to the state if his appeal falls short. It, quote, "It may be something he can't pay without a real estate fire sale," Coffey said. Despite the bruising legal battle ahead, it is possible the Trump Organization has passed to success, no matter the outcome. Massimo D'Angelo, a real estate attorney at Blank Rome.
Hey, there's a goy lawyer.
Yeah, there's finally.
Finally.
Predicted that
Thank
even
God.
if the ruling, well, we had a Ewing in the other thing. So.
Yeah, that's true.
He was probably a Genta. That even if the ruling was upheld on appeal, the company could still move forward. Quote, certainly they would get out of the state where they can't operate or are considered to be black sheep, D'Angelo said, but they could go to other jurisdictions and be profitable. All right, so you've got the video exhibits. I thought what Kevin O'Leary had to say was actually very interesting. I mean, that guy's hit and miss. He can be a real fucking asshole.
He's a real fucking asshole. Yeah, I mean, he is a true capitalist and a real anti-social welfare, anti-social democratic reform. I mean, he's a total prick. But when you're right, you're right. The old saying goes.
Well, not only that, this is the kind of thing that a prick like him knows of what he speaks.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
So he's getting into how every business like Trump's operates and how absurd it is to single out. This is what I've said about when people would bring up Trump having mob ties. I would tell them, listen, it's not that I'm defending Donald Trump in general per se against everything that's said about him. I'm not like a fan of Donald Trump. But in the era in which Trump really came up in New York real estate, you could not put up a fucking lemonade stand in New York without dealing with the mob. Like it was just an openly acknowledged fact of New York real estate. They controlled cement cost 75% more in New York than anywhere else in the country in that era because they controlled all the concrete suppliers and would tell them what to bid. So that you can't lay at him. I mean, if what O'Leary is saying is right, and I have no reason to doubt it, it makes sense. Yeah, I mean, this is one of those things. Like, this is how the game is played. There are a lot of shit that's technically illegal, right?
Well, let's take a look. I mean, the case that he makes is that the reason why banks give you a hard time, the reason they haggle with you is because they assume that you're inflating the value of your assets. But let's hear from a true expert. As Russell said, this is an example where his total prickishness actually comes in handy because it makes him a pretty good source of information. So let's go to Kevin O'Leary's response to this ruling.
Leave out politics and just talk about what happens in real estate development anywhere. So if you're a developer and you've got a building on a block anywhere in America and it's worth, let's say, $500 million and you want to build a building right beside it, you go to the bank and say, this building is worth $500 million. I'd like to borrow a construction finance loan against this asset, and I want you to tell me it's worth $500 million too. And the bank negotiates with you and says, well, no, we think it's worth $400 million. And you fight it out. You're always trying to show your assets in the brightest light with the sunshine you can possibly determine for them. You want them to be worth the very most because you're only going to get a 40 or 50% loan to value, as it's called. Then you borrow that money. In the case of a $500 million asset, maybe you get $250 million, and you build a new building with a construction finance loan. And so that's what this case is all about. And by the way, forget about Trump. Every single real estate developer everywhere on earth does this. They always talk about their asset being worth a lot, and the bank says no. And that's just the way it is. So in this case, when I'm trying to figure out, and I'm not pro or con, or I don't care about the politics, who lost money? Nobody. The bank got paid back the construction finance loan, and a new building was built. And if you're going to sue this case and win, you got to sue every real estate developer everywhere. This is all they do. This is what they do all day long, every day. So I don't think this thing will ever survive appeal, regardless of what the fine is. This doesn't even make sense. Now, look, I know Trump's got a lot of problems in other indictments and everything else, but this, if you're a real estate developer, you're watching this, you're saying, what is this? This is ridiculous.
Yeah, and, like I said, that makes sense. I mean, this is his realm. It makes sense that, the more you can convince the bank that your asset is worth, the bigger a loan you'll likely get. He co-hosts the Shark Tank show. Different situation, right? It's not a bank loan, but they are looking to sell shares of their company in exchange for money and perhaps some piece of the action. right? So the guy comes, hey, I have a battery-operated ball washer, and we estimate the value of this ball washing company at, $2 million, so I'm asking $200,000 in exchange for 10%. And they say, well, I don't think it's worth $2 million.
Are you
think it's worth
tired
half
of your
$1 million.
man's foul-smelling balls?
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. And they say, oh, it's not worth $2 million. You're insane, right? That's not fraud. They're trying to get as much as they can out of you. Like, that makes sense to me.
Well, that's another thing. I mean, there's a certain subjectivity to market value.
Oh, of course, yes.
Right?
Obviously.
Like how
by definition.
Yeah, there's no like government rule that this is worth this. If somebody wants to pay you $250 million for a $100,000 house, there's no rule against it. So where is the crime here? Especially when the banks were paid back.
They were paid back. No one lost money. That's also what he said. He said no one lost out.
There's no victim. There's no one was defrauded here, except you're getting in this very technical area where it seems to me this is just an example. It's like what they say in totalitarian states. In the end, if you look hard enough, everyone's guilty of a crime.
Well,
right?
yeah.
It seems like that's what they're doing in this case with him, right? Like the whole industry operates on this basis, which may technically be fraudulent, but it's assumed that it runs this way. But hey, man, if one of these people ever steps out of line and you want to come down on them, you could enforce this technicality.
Or if they're running for president and they're trying to end your Ukraine war, right? I mean, they're clearly trying to bankrupt the guy. Right. In an effort to what? Force him out of the race? Will it stop there? I mean, at this point, he's going to double down. He's going to figure, well, I guess I have to win the presidency and then get my Justice Department to reverse all these rulings. I mean, this is a state ruling, so I guess he can't. But that's got to be the game. It's funny. Like, they say he wants to become a dictator. Well, you're kind of forcing him to become a dictator because you're basically trying to bankrupt him. So unless he becomes emperor of the universe, he's going to be in the doghouse the rest of his life, right? Like, you're making it impossible for him to even live unless he becomes president and becomes a dictator. He has to. You're kind of forcing his hand a bit there, don't you think?
The cat was named Vagina.
Yeah.
Please clap.